Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you're spending a bit of your precious time listening to communication, not just any communication, holistic communication. Truly, it's my intention that you'll get at least one idea that you want to take on newly and that you'll find this time well spent. So let's move on. Communication is the single most crucial skill you can develop for both your business and your personal success. It covers a wide range of activities that either create positive or negative outcomes in your life. And all of them have a huge impact on who you be and how you achieve. So let's look at a couple of intersection points of communication that will make a difference to you should you decide to test the waters and incorporate one or more areas as a new habit for you. And I truly do hope you look at this with a new habit generating attitude. Perception is a two-sided demon. There's just no question about it. On one side, it's a skill that promises a successful, fulfilling life as you develop an outlook that supports rather than harms you. Let me tell you what I mean. You see, the good part of perception is it's, all of the ingredient. Perception is part of that ingredient that goes into developing a vision for your future. Or it has you choosing to measure your coworkers or relationships from a mindset of how they add value rather than how they do harm, or in identifying major trends that are coming down the pike that will positively impact both your career and your company's future. Those that have learned to challenge their perceptions regarding people and projects and opportunities and business flourish wherever they are. So train yourself. Stop seeing what you expect. Rather clear your vision to see what is really there, or to see possibility, or to see pluses in the people around you. The downside of perception is that the view that people have of you is their reality. And unfortunately, there's a whole bunch of people who have not learned to build perception muscle that works rather than harms. What people think and believe, whether accurate or not, often becomes reality to them. So let's dig a bit deeper into perception. How often have you been in an argument, or to be politically correct, should I say, locked into an ideological point of view? So imagine yourself here, where in this scenario, one woman is arguing convex, convex, while the other is firmly entrenched on the side of concave. Both are right. What would have happened if one had paused to ask exploratory questions? Or what if one had stepped back to shift their perspective? There is always, always more than one side to assess a situation. So consciously having a handle on a multiple view or multiple positions has you less likely to become locked into harmful, rigid mentality. Let's look at another way. Who we are and what foundation we stand on determines how we perceive and respond to a situation. I call it the explanation gap. You may be familiar with Aristotle's axiom that states, nature abhors a vacuum. Well, the truth is, vacuums take place in business and life all over the place. And when this occurs, our mind almost automatically rushes to fill that gap in. It goes like this. An interaction occurs where we have an expectation of some kind of subsequent interaction. Let's say you call a customer, and then you call a customer again, and then you call a customer again, and yet there's no response to that call. That no response is a second interaction that you thought should occur and yet never occurred. or the outcome was different than what you imagined. So this is the explanation gap. This gap is caused by unknowingness, uncertainty, or unexpectedness. You see, our mind quickly sets about filling a gap with a plausible explanation, something we can live with. In reality, you're just guessing as a way to create a story that you can live with or you can accept as a temporary or permanent explanation for what occurred until the real facts come in or until they never come in, and then you live in that story as your foundation. If you're self-confident, you're more likely to fill the gap with empowering thoughts. So let's say you're self-confident, and let's go back to the example of calling a customer service or a customer several times and they don't return your call. You could say, oh, they must be out of the country, or oh, they must be really busy in critical project, or oh, perhaps voicemail failed, or oh, all of these are O's that are optimistic and positive in nature. However, if your belief in self and others is diminished or undeveloped, you may fill this explanation gap with a story that says, oh, I didn't do a good job the last time. They don't want to talk to me anymore. Oh, they've moved on to another vendor. Oh, they don't want to do business with my company anymore. Oh, oh, oh. And these negative stories disempower and are harmful. And you move through the world living the foundation of those stories, either optimistic or pessimistic. And which do you think is going to harm you? This explanation gap occurs all day long in every walk of life you have. It's a scary thought, isn't it? So pause for a moment. Think about yourself. What thoughts are you stuffing your gaps with? Is it empowering or disempowering? Now, I want to go to another example, and I love this simple experiment that Ellen Langer, a psychologist at Harvard University, used to demonstrate how a bit of context or perception change can have a huge impact on our world. So she showed everyone that merely by inverting an eye chart so that the large E, hey gang, I'm really sorry. You're going to have to use your imagination on this one because I couldn't find an eye chart with an E at the bottom. So use your imagination. Flip it upside down. What she said is with an E at the bottom, people read letters. So as they're reading the letters with the E at the bottom, they read letters they couldn't see before. She believes that the standard chart, which gets progressively smaller, actually is telling us soon you're not going to be able to see or read what you're looking at. Get that? So what I want you to ask yourself is, what E can you turn upside down or inside out that has been harming you? Or what explanation gap can you fill with optimism rather than pessimism that will have you being all that you were created to be? Where can you expand your point of view to see another's position or to see someone in a new light? You see, your mind is far more powerful than you ever credit. Your perception can either enhance your walk through life or not. And you choose, 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 choose. Now, let's explore listening. I know. Most of you are saying to yourself, I'm a good listener. As a result, we don't spend much time enhancing this ability. And I just love this study of 8,000 people. And they were asked, are you a good listener? and virtually every one of them responded that they believe they listen as effectively or more effectively than their coworkers. Again, I want you to take a pause. Is this true in your experience? Is almost everyone you converse with a great listener? Now, turn this view back on yourself. Are you really as great a listener as you think you are? You know, none of us are. I don't think any of us are as good a listener as we should and could be. You have to understand, listening is far more complicated and unique than you may ever believe. Think about it. Listening comprehension exists in time. So the person you're listening to is actually speaking in real time to you. And then that is transformed into something that's more ephemeral in nature because it goes inside your head for you to interpret correctly or not. So listening really has a huge chunk spent in an ephemeral nature context, which creates unexpected issues, as you all know. On top of that, you understand just as well as I do, our brain takes breaks, often frequent breaks. In fact, our brain sometimes just simply becomes bored with what it's listening to or what it's hearing because it listens and the brain functions at a far greater rate than people can ever speak. You know, in our fast-paced, multi-priority world, listening half-heartedly has become a fine art for many. In my mind, and I'm hoping this isn't true, in my mind I can see you smiling as you listen to this session, as your brain starts moving into the pile on your desk or the proposal still needing to be written and what you're cooking for dinner tonight. I hope that's not true. And then your brain is quickly turning back into what I'm saying and picking up a few sentences and tuning out once again, because this is how our brain works, unfortunately. You know, the good news is we have a magnificent thinking machine called the brain. And even though we talk slower than our brain processes, our brain can be taught to slow down. So we have to work at this skill harder than ever before because we're in a world that's filled to overflowing with distractions. And on top of that, as bright creatures as we are usually far too busy thinking about, what gem we are going to say next, that very few of us are really listening to one another. To become an active, engaged listener, learn to listen with two ears. And, God didn't make a mistake when he gave us two ears and one mouth. Tune in to receive. Hold your thoughts at bay. Stop rehearsing what you're going to say next. We need to be entirely present in the moment. The fact is, as we gain listening skills, research has found that we'll get more information, increase trust, reduce conflict, understand how to motivate others better, and inspire higher levels of commitment. Not bad from improving one small skill set, is it? Now, nonverbal communication is tricky, and yet it's an essential skill for effectual communicators. There's just no question about it. Actually, we communicate far more with facial expressions and voice tonality than we ever do with our words. This isn't surprising when you consider that body language has a 50,000-year evolutionary jump on the spoken word. Added to that, virtually every normal person learns nonverbal communication long before speech. As an embryo in your mother's womb, you were sensitive to her moods. And then, as babies, we learn to make our needs known through crying and facial expressions, as well as, the arms and legs gesturing. It is only much later in our human development that communication takes place with words. So nonverbal communication is learned in an intimate fashion and an early age, far earlier than words ever were. And so it makes sense that we all are normally more attuned to this nonverbal style of communication, even if only at an unconscious level. And by the way, research reveals that women fling around 2 times as much nonverbal clues as do men. So if you're a woman listening to this session, become aware that you may be saying more than you actually mean to reveal simply through your body language. Despite the fact that the cursive penmanship has been eliminated from our children's curriculum, and by the way, this is shocking to me, writing skills are valuable in today's marketplace, no question about it. And unfortunately, as the College Board points out, the majority of U.S. employers said that 1/3 of the workers fail to meet the writing requirements of their position. As the report goes on to say, quote, unquote, it's increasingly important to be able to convey content in a tight, logical, direct manner, particularly in a fast-paced technology environment. Better writing improves clarity in the workplace, the customer experience, collaborative efforts for change and innovation, for getting projects through on time and under budget. And again, we find an area where that mischievous scoundrel called perception rules. Because it's never what you write that rules the day. A classic example of this, and a sad example, is the Kennedy Space Center Challenger shuttle launch. It offers us a memorable and riveting example of the failure of written communication. A simple statement on a to-do list states, check O-rings. Get that? Check O-rings. What was meant? The O-rings need to be followed up on. What was heard or interpreted or read? Everything is A-OK. The result? The shocking explosion of the space shuttle seen on television by me, and I'm sure many of you listening to this session. Where are the potential gaps in your written communication where interpretation could do harm to a relationship, to a project? Make sure everyone is on the same page as you move forward. Ironically, the growing proliferation of email is one of the reasons clarity in writing is so critical in today's marketplace. Think about all the jumbled messages you've received and the waste of time, money, and lost productivity you've had to go through simply because of poorly written emails. Or how about the email wars? Let me be politically correct again. Project differences that go back and forth in email battles when simply picking up the telephone will often resolve the issue in a minute. As a matter of fact, I tell my clients that if you're exchanging more than 2 emails, pick up the phone and call. By the way, isn't this conflict a smooth transition for the topic of conflict itself? I know you never get into any disagreements, but just in case you're around conflict, let's discuss it because there is no question this is the difficult side of communication. The first thing you need to understand is you're never involved in conflict unless there's a root cause issue. So please don't respond to the trigger event. That's the blow up. That's the expression of conflict that erupts seemingly out of nowhere. Rather explore the deeper issue that has caused it and go back and ask the question again and go back and ask the question again. Can you remember when you felt this way before? Can you remember when you felt this way before? Go back until you identify the root cause of the conflict. You see, if you don't pinpoint that real cause, that real root issue, triggering events, blow-ups will pop up all over the place, damaging your hope to achieve a great relationship and a collaborative relationship or a successful project or a business partnership or whatever you're involved in. So if you're not proficient at dealing with conflict, your career and most certainly your personal life will be very troublesome, and you know that. And by the way, studies reveal there isn't much difference where men and women are concerned in conflict. However, women have a tendency to use a more interpersonal and interdependent criteria in managing conflict, whereas men use more personal and independent styles. So please don't let this difference in and of itself create a conflict. Remind yourself that those around you usually want to succeed, and usually they want you to succeed. So understand what they need. Try walking a mile in my shoes mentality. It is important to understand the skin you have in the game and what you want as well as what they want. Be flexible about how you get it. It's important to understand the potential loss or threat that both of you are concerned about. Then it is losing your attachment to being right. It is eliminating judgment and resistance. Simple, right? Not, but well worth the time and effort. Phew! That was a massive brain dump on communication. It is my hope that you are relating to one aspect or more of communication with a new mindset, because this is such a crucial skill, and you need to continually evolve and develop and mature more effective communication skills for continued success. It is my hope that you have much success in the future. Thanks for your time on this session. I look forward to hearing your comments.